Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show Live. Can we save children from poverty in the poorest areas in America? This week's show features Louisiana 2nd Congressional District candidate Claston Bernard. Since the election is on March 20th, 2021 to replace Democrat Cedric Richmond, we don't have much time, so we're going to need everybody to put their shoulders to the wheel and help Claston get out the vote and get people to those polls. I know you're going to ask why we would support a Republican in this D+25 district. Well, first, CD2 in Louisiana is one of the poorest in the country. Nearly 40% of all children in the district are living in poverty every single day. And what has been being done by Democrat politicians in that district just is not working. I ask you to hear Mr. Bernard out today, and you'll see why this man deserves and should get our support. He's a legal immigrant, an Olympian athlete and champion, a strong family man, and believes so much in America because he has lived our dream. He knows in his heart and mind all citizens must be empowered to reach their full potential, and government policies are failing them, especially the Democrat Party's favorite, the welfare state that has destroyed the black family since the mid-1960s. This race is entirely winnable, folks, and the first step is to get Claston Bernard past the primary and into a runoff. So without further ado, Mr. Claston Bernard, welcome to the Rob Maness Show. How are you, Claston?
Hey, Rob. I am doing well. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. It's good to have you on with us. I know you are very busy trying to hit that district and get as many voters as you can out. But I have to ask, let me just tell the viewers, hey, this is our second candidate in the effort to retake Congress with Republicans. And Claston, I have read his book, and he is a phenomenal individual. And most importantly, he's an honest, real human being and has a real family that understands the real problems of the rest of the real families that are out here in America, especially in the 2nd District. So, Claston, just take a few minutes and introduce yourself to folks. A lot of Louisianans I know are watching this show. They do every time we're on, and we appreciate having them on.
Well, I'm from Jamaica. Grew up in Jamaica in a 2-bedroom home. No electricity, no running water. Now, that was somewhat by choice because my great-grandfather told my dad that the way to change your children's education is life is through education. And my dad set out to do that. He was a builder, but he forego wanting to have a nicer house with all the amenities to make sure we had the best education money could buy. So with that, I ended up in one of the best schools in Jamaica, really good school, all boys school, that was designed for gifted poor boys growing up in Jamaica. But by the time I got to the school, it was more a school of affluence. You had to have a whole lot of money, or if you didn't have a lot of money, you had to sacrifice a lot of money to get there. But the reality was, coming from where they were, it didn't deter my dad to say, you know what, these are my responsibilities. I am going to make sure I do what was necessary to make sure they succeed in life. So while I was in college, I always enjoyed reading. I wanted to go to university, but I didn't know how I could go to university. I didn't know how I would pay for it. I knew university was expensive. So I think about 1993, 94, a guy from my high school got an athletic scholarship to University of UT Arlington. UT Arlington. And I said, what? He had a track scholarship to study engineering to UT Arlington? I said, that's what I want to do. And it's around that time I read Ben Carson's book, Gifted Hands. A friend of mine whose dad was a doctor gave me that book. He knew I loved to read. And Ben's life was so much like mine. And I'm like, wow, this is America. And look at what this guy had to go through to get where he is. So that was very inspirational. And just reading his book just kind of just was a catalyst to just put my shoulder to the wheel, develop my athletic talent, and just push on through. And I ended up becoming a phenomenal athlete. By the time I became a senior in high school, I had 20 something scholarship offers.
Wow,
1997, I had 5 visits. I
that's
had five
incredible.
visits. Yes, I had 5 visits in 1997, and one was LSU. The next was Auburn, Nebraska, Wyoming, and I think Bethune-Cookman. So I said, hey, you know what? LSU was the first stop. I came to LSU in April 1997, and I fell in love with Baton Rouge. I fell in love with LSU. The climate that day too, it was gorgeous, man. It was a beautiful day. So I was like, hey, this is it. Plus, they had really good athletes. So
Yeah.
my journey to LSU, I ended up coming to LSU, had a very successful track and field career. Won 4 SEC titles, won the NCAA's, made 2 Olympic Games, and I won the Commonwealth Games gold medal in 2002. And the Commonwealth Games is the second largest Olympic type event outside of the Olympic Games. So from there, while I was still competing professionally, I was selling life insurance, and I was doing continuing ed class for life insurance, and they had an advertisement for building inspection. And so I said, "Oh, you can become a building inspector." I said, "Yeah,
Hmm.
I grew up around building. My dad's a builder. I love that." I said, I'm gonna pursue that because that's what I love. I enjoyed that kind of stuff. So I started pursuing that while I was competing, and just developed that, learned that, and did everything that I could do to better my skills. So by the time track and field wound down because of injury, I was doing that. I had a building inspection company going, and I was able to just start exploring life. Started living life, transitioning to America. One of the aspects of what I do was federal properties. I started doing federal properties, so I was traveling all over the country. So I started seeing America up close, more
Yeah.
ways than one. Working in a lot of public housing environment, a lot of major cities, and what I started seeing was quite disturbing. I remember one property I went to, and there was a lady there. She was in her 70s, beautiful black lady, and such a sweet person. And she said to me, she said, "I've been living here for like 53 years." And I looked
Wow.
at her. I was like, but what she said after that was, "My children, my son, my daughter lives here, my son live here, and my grandchildren live here." And I was like, that is not creating generational wealth. That is not what you want. Yes, you want people to get help when it's needed, but you don't want to lose generation into government welfare. But
Exactly
one of the
right.
other yeah, so one of the things that even took it further, I was in Savannah, Georgia, working, and I saw beautiful girls, young girls. I think 15 through 18. I think the 18-year-old probably had 4 children. And I'm like, what's going on? This is just not right. This just wasn't. So, I started traveling the country, and I realized this was affecting many different races. Native American Indians, pretty bad.
Yeah, they
Hispanic
are.
Americans, white Americans. The welfare state is devastating. It belittles people, and there are good people who work in these on these properties. Very very good people, very nice people. But the reality is, some of these people who are trapped there end up becoming like children, and they do. Some people do treat them like children. So for me, I saw an America that I didn't like, and I know from what I know about history, socialist programs are devastating on economies and countries.
Yeah.
So I've always been, I like to write and journal when I was traveling and different things like that. So from my courses in history at LSU, and I just love reading history. So I've just been collecting books after books, Western civilization and Black history, whatever history you want to talk about, American history. And from what I saw from American history, And just reading the Constitution, I recognize that this country has a lot that is not being emphasized anymore. We're not talking about the obstacles that we have overcome. We're talking about oppression. You know, whenever we
Yeah.
talk about slavery, we talk about slavery. Not that slavery is no longer here, but yes, most any American would probably say it was a flaw. It was an ugly
Hmm.
stain in America.
I agree.
You know,
It's terrible.
uh, yes, it is. You know, we're not talking about those things. We're not talking about people like men like Frederick Douglass or Booker T. Washington. You know, they always like to talk about, you know, some of the founders and saying the founders were not good people, but they gave us something very special. They gave us a constitution. They gave us a brilliant Declaration of Independence. But the pieces that form this country's government was being eroded by what I was seeing around the country.
Hmm.
And I was trying to just put that together. And I tell you what, you know, I ended up writing a book called Outcast, No Room at the Table for Conservative Blacks in Black America, because I
Yeah.
would question people. I would ask them about why are things this way, and they would quickly point to slavery or Jim Crow. And I'm like, that can't be the answer to everything that we're seeing. So just digging into the history, I
Yeah.
started recognizing that even during slavery, the black family was intact. During Jim Crow, the black family was intact. So the change started happening when the government started playing a more active role in providing welfare to black Americans. But no one even look at the Native American Indians. They've been on welfare for hundreds of years, and their situation is very bad. No one is talking about that. So even though right now we're seeing the destruction of the black family, the Native American communities, they have been decimated really, you know, really badly from these kind of system and programs in place. So for me, I wanted to connect. I wanted to see what was great about America. And then you go back to 1620. When you go back to 1620, you saw the pilgrims come in here, and what they when they came, came against great obstacles. But they wanted to be able to worship God. They wanted to be able to have their own community. They wanted to be able to have their own system of government, and they also wanted to be able to have, you know, a good education system. Now, the pieces for American founding was planted that day. When they came aboard in December, came on land in December 1620.
Hmm.
It was captured in 1776. And in 1776, they put together what needed to end the unjust system of the old world of slavery. Slavery was an economic system that the whole world was practicing. America's formation basically was the death knell to slavery because America put in place a system that recognized us all as created equal, and slavery conflicted with the Declaration of Independence and also the principles laid out in the U.S. Constitution. Now, back to what the pilgrims wanted to be able to worship freely. They held dearly to their faith, they held dearly to God, they held dearly to family. During slavery, blacks that were enslaved, they had God, family, and whatever
Sure.
education they could learn again, they would hold on to it. But that was all that they had to hold on to. They didn't have much else to do, but it kept them together because even when they tried to strip the blacks of their humanity because they held dearly to their family, God and family, they could not do it. So after the Civil War, which cost us dearly,
Sure did.
slaves, within 50 years after the Civil War, 50% of the slave population became literate. And what was the source of that? The main source of that was the church. The church played an active role. The black church, because there were a lot of things that were still going on to the freed blacks. You know, they had black codes, they have the KKK, the White League, they had all these kind of system that came about that was trying to destabilize the black race. But the
Yeah, we
church
just
was
we
a
just did away with a part of that system 2 years ago when we we repealed the non-unanimous juries here in
Yes.
Louisiana. That was part
Yes.
of the
Yes.
Constitution that was put in 1897, I believe. Originally, it was part of that whole effort after the Civil War, wasn't it, to take that black population that had gotten literate and elected to office as Republicans, right? If I
Yes.
remember correctly, and
Yes.
suppress that population. But even that didn't hurt the family. The family of the black community wasn't really hurt that much from that perspective when you compare it to what happened in the 1960s to today. Is that right? If I understood
Yes.
you correctly, Claston?
Yes. 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 Because during
Yeah.
slavery, up to 80% of blacks were married. After slavery ended, those families that were broken apart, they searched high and low to reunite. They did everything they could do to reunite as a family. But they made
Yeah.
education their focus. They made skills. Booker T. Washington created the Tuskegee University, and his focus was to employ skill-based sets, because with the proper skill, and if you're good at what you do, anybody would employ you, because people are looking for competent individuals to work for them, and it was
Yeah.
a success. But we've gotten away from Booker T. Washington's dream, and we've embraced this dream that continued to push these liberal arts degree and some of these degrees that are actually useless to being able to provide for our family. And I'm saying everything has a place and time, but just to go to college to get a degree and come out making $15 an hour is a waste of time for me, and
Right.
frankly, a waste, running up debt. So the pieces to what worked in this country we've already seen. Now here we are, Congressional District 2, district, the fourth worst district in the country.
That's
One of the
incredible.
worst.
That's incredible to know that, because I know a lot of folks that live in that district that are extremely talented, hardworking people. But it's
There.
incredible to know that.
Yes. So when you look at that, you say, oh, okay, but then you look at the numbers. You say 5.1% of married couples in that district live below the poverty level. 21% of female head of household is below the poverty level. Right there, you see a glaring discrepancy.
Yeah,
So
sure
right
is.
there, you see a solution. Marriage. Marriage is a solution.
Yeah, I
We need
noticed
to.
on your website one of your tenets is family, not just, but I've heard you talk about it. So explain to folks what you mean by that a little bit in depth, and how it relates to the foundation of the maintaining a foundation with God piece of your platform that's on your website.
Well, the family is the first institution ever created by God. You cannot have a government without the family. So, one of the things I say a lot is that the government is inferior to the family. So, with the family being the first institution, it is the strength of the society. The family is responsible for your spiritual well-being, your health, and your economic well-being, not the government. The government also does not get to define life, liberty, and property. Those things are above the government. Those are what God gave to us. Those things are self-evident. There are certain things that is so the family is important. Now, when you move away, when you start encouraging policies that will destroy or pull the family apart, you're going to suffer. And it's not saying that there single persons or single mothers aren't able to do and do well and do exceedingly well, but we were created to work as a unit, and when we're not working as a unit, we tend to suffer. And even if you're making money as a single mother, your son or your daughter still is probably missing something. They're missing that other piece, that other part of the puzzle that is supposed to work. So
Yeah.
family is the security. It's the financial security. It's the economic security that is society is vested in.
And it isn't the family, and I've heard you say this before, but I want the folks in the audience to hear it. The family is an institution, right? That's the first institution, isn't it?
Yes, It's the first institution ever created by God. That's it.
It's amazing.
It is the most it's the most important institution we have as a society, not the government. It's not about being a Republican or Democrat. It is a family. If you are a true conservative, if you truly care about this country, is your first responsibility is to God, family. That's your first responsibility, not to government.
That's right.
And because we've gotten that wrong, we are where we are today, and we're on the way to destruction and to serfdom, because we're trying to recreate what God has already given to us perfect.
Yeah. So, from a policy perspective, Claston, when you get into office, and I say when because I believe you'll be in Congress someday, sooner, hopefully sooner rather than later. So I firmly believe that when you get into office, I know two of the biggest policies you want to challenge or actually create new policies to replace ones that are, especially in places like District 2 in Louisiana, revolve around education and economics. Go through the education piece for the folks, and I'll just remind everybody in the audience that we can see your comments. So later in the program, after Claston gets through these couple of questions, we're going to address your comments or questions if you have any for him or for me. And we appreciate you guys watching today. So Claston, walk us through what your thoughts are and what your proposals are going to be to fix the education system and then the economics piece of it, of life in this district for folks that are in pain every day.
You know, I say this: education is one of the best ways out of poverty. And I'll say this: it is not out of reach for any American. Now, in Congressional District 2, we need more choices. Now, I know New Orleans have the school choice program, but I'm a little more radical in what I'm looking at. We need to just go ahead and privatize all the school systems, make them compete against each other. Money should follow the students, not institution. We have to start doing those things. We have to advocate that the power goes back to the family, the family. And I will keep saying that because the family makes better decision than the government. They will be able to make better decision than myself. I'm trying to advocate for them to have policies that will benefit them. So we need to open up the education market. You should not be trapped by a zip code. The money should follow you to wherever you want to go. Now, in addition to that, my after-school education program, I want kids to be able to, between 6 and 17-year-old, if they want to learn dancing, if they want to learn swimming, horseback riding, basketball, gymnastics, they want to do pipe fitting, plumbing, electrical, whatever skill, coding, pilot, whatever they need to learn to develop and to broaden their horizon. So by the time they become a senior in high school, they have a solid vocation to work and not having to go to college, and they can sit there and build up some money and not having to be trapped in student loans. I would like to be able to give them that opportunity because that's one way to be able to create wealth. The other option is that if you want to go to college, you might be able to take those courses you are struggling. If someone offering an after-school program in math, in geography, in history, in chemistry, in biology, those programs are designed to help students become better. Because again, the key is that you have to get married, stay married, finish high school with a viable skill. Those are two prescriptions to be successful and to move out of poverty. And the statistics are there to show that. It says marriages reduces poverty as much as 80%. Having the right skill, even without going to college, is going to help you be more employable. So the educational aspect, again, even with that, economic wise, there's 122,000 students, kids in Congressional District. So my after school education program would be $300 a month. That's $3,600 a year for each parent. That's 475 million dollars, almost a $500 million coming into the local economy.
Yeah.
And that means now churches that have been established, organizations that have been established for 3 or 4 years, they're able to offer those programs. Those programs, they can find those through their school database system. Some of these programs will be able to advertise. They'll be able to, to get out there. So for any and anybody just can't be able to get into the program. If you're offering the program, you will have to have background checks. Whoever's offering this program has to be vetted. Now, that will help reduce the incidence of fraud. Kickbacks. You have to have attendance records, different stuff like that. You have to try to find ways to cut down on the fraud. But in the long run, you will have a more productive members, because the role of education is to make students and children productive members of society. It is not to indoctrinate them.
So this funding would come from the federal government through the Department of Education?
No, I want to partner. No, I want to partner with private companies to help reduce their tax burden. So if you have a $5 million or $10 million tax burden, or if you contribute a $5 million, if your company contribute $5 million to this program, then you get that $5 million in tax credit.
Okay.
Tax break, but I want it going from the company to the programs.
All right.
Yes,
so
there'll be oversight.
Corporate partnerships.
Yes.
With tax incentives. That makes sense.
Yes.
That makes very good sense. Because I know a lot of folks that I talk to really question why the federal Department of Education exists. We've spent billions of dollars since 1970, when it was the 70s when it was created, and the performance of the kids keeps dropping. It doesn't ever increase, except for the money that we spend on it keeps increasing. And I'd like to see that money be given back to the states and to the students, really, and their parents. And I know a lot of folks agree with that. I think you agree with that too, don't you?
Yes. Well, you have to look at it. There are people with vested interest. You have to give the power back to the parents. You have to give it back to the parents. It is not the role of the government. Like I said, the family is upstream. You can't take away the responsibility from the family. Bureaucrats then take over.
That's right. That's right. The more bureaucrats are involved, the less effective the outcomes are that we reach them. And we see that every day in various things, not just education. Here's a question from one of our viewers: is where can I get his book? I like what he says. And I believe this viewer is from within your congressional district.
My book is available on Amazon.com. You can look up Outcast, No Room at the Table for Conservative Blacks in Black America. There are other books on there. Also, but I'm taking it that you're asking about.
Well, thank you very much, Claston. What about from an economic perspective? Education is key, the family is key, but economics and the programs that have come out of the federal government at various times since the 1960s all sounded great, but when I look back at the history, I've studied history in the 1950s and from 1900 in the 1950s, and the numbers from a data perspective show that the black family was much more prosperous. And the whole idea behind America, as you've said many times, is prosperity for all, because we're all created equal, really, essentially, and we have certain unalienable rights. And I see the federal government, and a lot of other people do too, see the federal government as going so far away from those concepts that they've actually broken the black family and are on the path to break other families of persons of color, like the Hispanic community, if we don't change these policies and turn things around. for folks, so that they have the opportunity to achieve the prosperity that you have, that I have, because that is the critically important piece to one of the big issues in this country that I think is the root of all kinds of problems that people say they want to solve.
You know, the minimum wage law is anti-black, and I will say that over and over. When the minimum wage first came about, it was to keep black construction workers out of the workforce. In a free market system, there's no reason to have a minimum wage. In a socialist system, there's need for minimum wage. But in a free market system, you want people to understand that the more skill sets you acquire, the more you will make. It's just like in sports. The better you become, the more money you acquire. Bill Gates, he deserves the money he makes for Microsoft because people value what he created. Jeff Bezos, people value the things that they create. So there has to be incentives and for people to be able to prosper. When you put a minimum wage in, you automatically disqualify a number of people. So we need to get rid of laws that actually just continue to make the situation worse. So economically, we have to start looking at, again, the federal government role should not be the facilitator as to who makes what. Their goal is supposed to be limited. The free market system works. Yes, we can talk about the crooks, we can talk about the cronies, but we have prisons for that. You know, that's why we have prisons. And sometimes, we need to make sure those people are trying to skate around, are trying to take advantage of people, are taken care of. But the best system is a free market system. And that's the thing about it. Even when they had the minimum wage laws, or they have these, even during Jim Crow, there were people like in the sharecropping industry that still went out and hired blacks because they could hire black at a lower earning. And guess what? So there are ways when you create these laws, people find ways around them.
Yeah.
So begin with, we don't need it, because that's why the illegal immigrants come here and they're able to work below minimum wage to the detriment of the people that these politicians say they are trying to help.
Yeah, it seems so simple, that we should be able to easily change or repeal these policies and focus on things that actually do work. I know that you and I've talked about the economic opportunity zones that Senator Tim Scott and President Trump advocated for, and it still exists, and that's really based on a concept that I read about from a senator from New York a long time ago. I think he was a senator from New York named Robert F. Kennedy that actually tried a program similar to that in one of the black communities in the outlying area of New York City, and it worked.
Yes, it did.
It worked. You gave incentives for entrepreneurs and investors to invest in small businesses in an underserved community, and you had small business owners that actually lived in the community that wanted to be successful, and of course that made its way down to the family and the children who grew up in solid homes and were able to get in good schools and be prosperous. Now, this was years ago. And now we have these economic opportunity zones that sounds like a really good way to get away from the welfare state policies and back to a policy of prosperity, especially for these underserved communities. And I know it's not just black communities, because you told me a story about a government housing project that was filled with white folks that you did a building inspection on before. But in CD2, it is the black community that is, almost 40% of African American children in CD2 are at below the poverty level. So, so there, I know why you're wanting to get to that, but how will that work, and what will you do to change to get away from a welfare system that hurts the families and into a system like economic opportunity zones?
Well, even with incentivize people getting married. In Poland, I think the government is making it a priority to incentivize people to get married, stay married, and have children. You get a bonus with each child that you have for being married. And, so we need to those things help. So we can. That's a radical plan. I'd love to see that
It is.
incentivize. Cut down because the fact is, even with divorces, there's incentives for divorces in this country. There are incentives for child custody battles. Why not just turn that around? Why not incentivize people to stay together? Incentivize
Yeah.
people to have, build that. Yes, the opportunity zone, they're necessary. And there are a lot of concerns. Some of the black, and rightfully so. Some of the blacks in the community, they'll say, what, we're still not the beneficiary of these opportunity zones. Well, we need to create a system that reward them, that is able to give them loan, to give them, which is what President Trump was trying to do, to provide them access to capital to be able to invest in these opportunities. They need to make that accessible to them. That's what we need to do. We need to make money accessible. But even further than that, we have the oil industry, we have the tourism industry. We have busing companies that is struggling, down to 50% their capacity. And look at the history that we have in Louisiana. That shouldn't be. We need to create opportunities for these companies. We need to create more, and with having these opportunity zones, with having a vibrant economy, people are able to mobilize more. We're able to utilize the resources that we have. So the more we will be able to attract more people into our community from out of state with business opportunities. We need to cut down the burden of occupational licensing. That affects Black Americans disproportionately.
Certainly
no one talks about that.
Certainly does.
So
Certainly
that
does.
is one thing. We have to lower the barriers to entry, because to earn a living, right of every man. Not to something, but to earn a living. He has to go earn. I'm emphasizing earn is the right of every man. Okay?
Oh, I think you're right on the target, to be honest with you, Claston. It's like you mentioned about the $15 minimum wage. It destroys jobs. I think the latest number from the CBO is 1.6 million jobs that it will destroy. That doesn't do anything to help the folks that the people that are behind such a policy say they want to help. And that's the issue, and that's why I think you're such a strong candidate. Is that the policies that they've said we're supposed to help aren't doing that. They're having the opposite effect, and we've seen decades of data to show and outcomes to show that it has the opposite effect, and it's created challenges for us, like the need for criminal justice reform, because there's this guy that is in the White House that I think authored the 1994 crime bill that resulted in people like you and me and my friends that are Democrats on the other side of the aisle having to come together and do criminal justice reform, especially in states like Louisiana, to make sure that the criminals are in jail that should be in jail, and the folks that have been destroyed by a system that was slanted against them need to be looked at again and make sure that they have the opportunity to correct their mistakes in their lives. We've got a couple of comments here that I want to take to you, Claston. Here's one. Oh my God, I literally just said that yesterday about the occupational licensing. Claston, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I couldn't hear from.
Yeah, the comment was about, oh my God, I just said that yesterday about the occupational licensing, and there's another one that the state is, this state is ridiculous in their licensing requirements. I know I've worked with state legislatures and ran on one of my planks, and my platforms that I've run for office on has been to eliminate as much occupational licensing as possible, because it's a barrier to entry for entrepreneurs and small business owners, and
It is.
most of the jobs in this country are created by small businesses and will continue to be so even when we get out of this stupid pandemic that we're in, don't you think?
Look, think about this. Someone who's a good carpenter wants to start a business, and he's been red tape left, right, and center.
Yeah.
Left, you're a barber. You want to, and you're good at cutting here, and you just can't get in the trade. You have to be an apprentice, which is okay. But at the end of the day, you need opportunities. There are people who they have families to feed. They have mouths to feed. And when you're telling someone say who even had a tough past, maybe have a criminal record, can't really get into certain industries. They've turned their lives around. They're looking for opportunities, but they have a skill that they can offer. But
Yeah.
they don't have the money to pay for occupational licensing. That is unfair.
It's not only unfair; it keeps them from getting into that occupation.
Yes.
And it's more than unfair. It's really despicable that it does that, because that's government picking winners and losers. Because the people that are already in, they create these boards, and the government establishes these boards of licensing and all that, and then they make the requirements so drastic that your young man or woman just starting out or trying to get their life back together because they've been reconciled and recovered from breaking the law or some other issue like addiction,
yes,
and those kind of things, can't do it. And we've got to eliminate those. And that's another reason why I'm excited about your candidacy. Let's see here. We'll get another comment here. The government takes enough in taxes to take care of Americans in America, but they don't. They give it away to other countries and themselves while we fight to survive. Politicians are crooks. Tell folks, where you're at from the perspective of foreign aid and national security and those kind of things to protect our tax dollars, so that, tax dollars should primarily come back to the citizens, especially in the area of education and economics and prosperity and those kind of things. And we keep seeing, I think President Biden just authorized $4 billion to go for vaccines for other countries, and we don't have our folks all vaccinated yet. We don't even have the highest at-risk groups 100% vaccinated yet.
We're not even at herd immunity yet. We have to be like 60 or 70%. I think 70% to be at herd immunity. Here's the thing. America has done great things around this world. America is a beacon of hope to a lot of countries in the world. But one of the things, people, sometimes it sounds harsh, but when you do for people who are not ready to fight for something or to do for themselves, you make the situation worse. And that is sometimes the situation we create. It's not saying some of those people don't make use of what America has done for them. But the problem, that's part of the problem with the federal government, the executive. It's become too big. It has actually is forgotten why it's there. The federal government role is supposed to be limited. It's supposed to be foreign and domestic trade, defense, securing our borders, making sure, post office. That's basically the role of the federal government to begin with. So when we're sending money or sending abortion money to kill babies overseas, on other programs, who are we helping? Why are we doing that? Why would we be sending money overseas to kill babies? When there are things we could do here, their infrastructures are crumbling. I'd like to see even in CD2, I'd like to see some bridges built. I would like to see Louisiana more connected, roadways. I'd like to see an underwater tunnel in Louisiana to help ease the traffic.
I just lost my 6th windshield on my truck just yesterday when I was driving in Louisiana. It now has a 9-inch crack across it because of a rock, and every other windshield I ever put into my truck. And I'm laughing and chuckling because it's kind of a funny story, but it matches up with what you're saying. We need to be focused more on Americans. And some people call it America first. Some people just think that that's what America's government should be doing as a priority, and then we could do those other great things too. But after the American people's priorities are satisfied, and only after that, don't you think?
Yes, it is actually criminal. It is actually criminal to see this situation of some Americans. Yeah, and instead of incentivizing them to get out of that situation, we're leaving them there for block voting.
Yeah.
We're leaving them there so we have a sense of control. It is criminal. And then we're pretending to think that we care about other countries. How can you care about other countries when you have district like we do, like congressional district too?
That's right. Are you familiar with
What?
Cancer Alley?
I have heard that term before, but I've also known from that wasn't actually factual. Yes, there are things that happen, and there are things that we have to make sure we maintain the environment. But I do know we're not. The science doesn't show that we're the cancer alley, as they'd like to say. It sounds good and it sells, and the environmentalists, they're always driven by fear. They use fear in a lot of things. Just with the whole, it was the freeze in the 70s, then global warming, and then now it's climate change and all this kind of stuff. And there are things in the environment, but how we have to educate people really on the dangers of stuff, and without trying to scare them,
Yeah.
and then we do know, there are chemical plants, where we are, so we have to be mindful of as to how we operate them, but at the same time, they create economic opportunities for people. So,
Exactly.
what is the other option? What's the additional option?
I just
What are
wanted
you
to give you an
proposing?
opportunity to address that, because there's one of the comments, and I appreciate that. I mean, it's common sense. We've got to make sure that companies are doing the right thing by the environment and the right thing by their employees. If they get sick based on materials they've been handling, and if they have an impact, if those chemicals have an impact on the neighborhoods and those kind of things, we just got to make sure that they're required to do the right thing,
Yes.
because it is very important to keep the companies in there to provide job opportunities for all of us, but at the same time, make sure the folks that are impacted by that are taken care
Are
of.
safe. Yes.
Here's another one. This was a viewer. It must have come in late after the introduction. I hope you run for office, and I hope you'll stand up to both liberals and the rhinos. Please don't change, from Rebecca Webb. I appreciate it, Rebecca. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Claston, tell people again, because we're not quite finished yet. Tell people again what you're running, where you're running in, and how they can find you on the web.
I'm running for Congress in Congressional District 2. You can find more information about me at bernardforcongress.com. My ballot number is number 3. So whenever you guys go out and vote number 3. You can find my books on Amazon.com, Outcast, No Room at the Table for Conservative Blacks. Also, I Was Born a Winner, and Whose Voice Do We Hear? It's a Christian book. So again, I'm going to ask you guys, hey, we need to do some things differently. It hasn't been working in Congressional District 2. It is just, if you have a bad coach, you get rid of that coach.
Yep.
Okay? Likewise, I am here to fight for this district. I'm here to fight for my state. My state made me a champion. I want to champion Congressional District 2 in Washington, D.C. It sounds good to hear that we're at the back of the pack. But as a former athlete, I don't like to be at the back of the pack. I like to lead from the front. And I want to take Congressional District 2 to the front of the pack and maintain it. That's why I'm running for Congress. That's why I have confidence that you guys will make me your next congressman.
See, folks, that's why you need to help this man and his family get into Congress so they can help us. We've got to have folks that are not career politicians, that are devoted to the idea of America. And here's another one for you, Claston. What do you say to the folks that go, America was founded on slavery. They did the 3/5 thing in the Constitution. You keep talking about that. It's terrible. It doesn't work for me because I'm you know, whatever, brown, yellow, black, you know, transgender, LGBTQ, any of those things. What do you say to those kind of folks?
The American dream is accessible to anyone in this country. Slavery was an ugly stain in this country's history, but it doesn't define us. We have overcome many obstacles in this country. The Constitution, I would implore those who keep saying the Constitution considered blacks 3/5 of a human to really read the text. It was talking about whole numbers. Said 3/5, 60% of the slave population, 3/5 is 60% of the slave population would count towards voting. Otherwise, the South would have had full control of Congress, making sure that slavery would not end in America. We need to clear that narrative up. Now, I know there were some court cases that try to use that to keep and dehumanize blacks, but the reality is the truth won out in the end. Like I've said it many times. Scientifically, biblically, God's image is on us. Scientifically, genetically we're 99.98% similar genetically. We're only 0.012% different. So the basis of what they were saying doesn't hold weight scientifically. And the founders of this country were brilliant men. They were not that stupid. So I implore people who continue to make this statement to read the text. I would want to say it was the Article 1, Section 2 or something like that. I'm not sure. But that they claim that it was somehow blacks were 3/5 of a human being. And then read the 14th Amendment. And look at the word that was changed in the 14th Amendment. And when you look at that 14th Amendment, you realize all they did was remove the 3/5 clause so all Americans free, because slavery had ended. Because otherwise, the South would maintain the power in Congress. So yes, American history is there, but it's also not there for you to live in the past. You have to live now in the future. I came here as an immigrant. Look at my skin color. Do you think the racists care if I'm an immigrant or not? And whether they like me or not, it doesn't matter, because I am going to do what my parents taught me to do. Embrace God, embrace family, embrace education, embrace hard work. Those are the recipe to succeed in America. Not bloodline, not skin color, not political connection. None of those things.
All reasons why folks should support you in your run for Congress, Claston. All right, we've got time for one more, and here it is. Okay, this is a D+25 district, and for folks that don't know what that means it's a heavily Democrat district, but a Republican has won here in this district. Representative Joseph Gao is a Republican out of the Vietnamese American community there. That has won. So this district is entirely winnable, but their question is, okay, how are you going to win? What's your path to victory?
My path to victory. I'm not running as, I'm a Republican, but I'm not running as a Democrat or Republican. I'm running on conservative principles. See, we become polarized by the D and the R. I'm a conservative. And I know there are blacks who value conservatism. They value God. They value family. They value education. They value excellence. They value hard work. Those are the people I'm talking to. You can tell me D plus whatever you want to tell me. I don't see Democrats. I see people. I'm talking to people. That's why they just give people a chance to be people. That's who I'm talking to. I'm not trying to talk to Democrats. I'm not trying to talk to Republicans. I'm talking to Americans. Because well-meaning American, no matter what their color is, cares about Americans' well-being. I'm And that's what I'm appealing to. I'm not appealing to no Democrats or Republicans. How can you make this about Democrats or Republicans when people are suffering?
That's a
How
great
can we do that?
question. That's a great question that needs to be answered by a lot of folks that have been in politics for decades that ignore that question. When people are suffering, how can you make these elections about partisan hackery and things like that we've been seeing the last 3 or 4 decades? It's just incredibly bad, and the results show that. The results
Yes.
show that, my friend. So as we wrap up here at Claston, tell folks where they can find you on all the social media, and most importantly, where can you go donate? Because folks, this man needs your help. The only way he can get the only thing he needs is to get his message to the right numbers of people and get them to the polls, and that takes dollars. And dollars is what he needs. So listen to what he says, or where you can find out about his message and where you can donate. Claston, go ahead.
You can go to my website, bernardforcongress.com. Look, we need your donation. You can find me on Twitter at Claston B. You can find me on Facebook at Claston Bernard. But again, you can go early vote for me on March 6th. My ballot number is number 3. Vote for Claston Bernard. Go to bernardforcongress.com. Share my videos, share my story. Tell your friends, encourage your friends to donate to my campaign. This is a great American story. This is a great team to be a part of. This is another rocky moment. We have to rally behind Louisiana. It is time to rally Louisiana. Louisiana made me a champion. I will work hard to champion Louisiana in Washington, D.C. And if you send me to Washington, you will not be disappointed. So go to bernardforcongress.com, share my story, like, donate, on March 6th, early vote. March 20th, I need you to get out and vote. I look forward to you guys for your support. Okay?
Thank you, Claston, for joining us. We appreciate it. Good luck and stay safe, my friend. Our prayers are with you, and most importantly, our efforts are going to be with you. And I think everybody that saw this and sees this video will say, this is a man that we've got to have working for the people of Louisiana and working for the country, really, to set some things right in a way that has nothing to do with whether you're a D or an R. Take care, my friend.
Thank you, Rob. I really appreciate you having me on.
Thank you. Well, folks, that was Claston Bernard, congressional candidate for Congressional District 2 to replace Cedric Richmond in the great state of Louisiana. And he is a man that is not just driven, but is wholeheartedly in belief of the American idea of life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness. I'm Rob Maness, and I'll see you next week on the Rob Maness Show.